Hey folks, it's just me tonight, Greg Siskind. I am doing something a little bit different this evening, this fine summer night. I am going to talk only about one subject this evening, and I actually made some slides. And if it's not of interest to you, then you'll hopefully come back next week. But I think it's been in the news a lot. This major budget bill that the Congress passed last week that has been very controversial. There's a lot of immigration provisions that are in that bill. There hasn't been a lot of great information about what's contained in there. So, what I thought I would do today is I made some slides and I'm going to show you um, section by section what this bill does. And even if you're not a immigrant, it's I think helpful to know where a massive amount of your taxpayer dollars are about to be spent. But there are provisions that affect just about every kind of immigrant. So let me move to. Let's see if we can do this. I'm going to take the little banner off so that you can see the slides a little bit better. But I'll just get right into it. And apologies for the bad PowerPoint design formatting, which I decided to do at the last second because it was pretty plain looking. But I didn't really check it that carefully, so hopefully the formatting will be okay. But first thing I'll mention is immigration detention capacity. This is probably there's a couple that where the bulk of the money is being spent, and it's kind of like when you see a figure like $45 billion, it's sort of just a big number, and you don't really think about what that means. But I like to tell people that the average football stadium for an NFL team is, well, maybe it's a little bit more now, but we're talking about like $1 to $2 billion that they would spend on a decent stadium in a community. So this gives you an idea that it's a fairly extreme amount of money that is being about to be spent on building detention facilities. So I would imagine that there's about to be a lot of money that's made by some of the companies that are going to get those contracts. But basically, what they're doing here is they're trying to double the capacity for detention for immigrants that get picked up from 56,000 to 100,000. Now they think it's going to take the whole of the Trump term to be able to get to that capacity. What I will also say is that historically it's been not so successful in terms of these projects getting done in the time frame that they're looking at. But it does give you an idea of sort of like how big that they want detention to be. Right now they are at about capacity, so we're at about half that number. So they're talking about a fairly sizable portion of the U.S. population that would be sitting in immigration detention. That is that's the first thing I wanted to show you. The border wall. This is actually slightly more being spent on the wall on the southern border than actually being spent on detention of immigrants. $46 billion again. That is this is basically during the first Trump administration, they got funding. They tried to build it and they didn't really get that much built. There's a lot of skepticism that they would be able to, how much more they would be able to build. But this is also for things beyond the wall. When we're talking about border security, including things like, in the middle of rivers that are designed to prevent people from swimming across, and basically they say primary barriers, secondary barriers. I'm not really sure sort of exactly what they have in mind. But this is a big price tag as well. So expect big contracts for that as well. Also expect a lot of fighting with landowners on the southern border, and that's been one of the biggest problems is that they have to take a lot of private property away in order to be able to do this, and I think that's been one of the holdups. Okay, ICE, $31 billion, and this is one I think that we kind of know like what the deal is. They are trying to hire as many as 10,000 new ICE agents. Um, but that's also this is also for buses and airplanes and the other things that they need in order to remove people. And also, it is a demoralizing job for a lot of ICE officers, and they are having retention issues. So they want bonuses as well to help people be incentivized to stay. And again, this is one that they think that they're going to. It's going to take them at least the entire Trump administration to get to 10,000 new agents. I'm actually somewhat skeptical that they're going to get anywhere close, just because the unemployment rate is fairly low. It is and there are a lot of um, there are a lot of people who would feel squeamish about those jobs right now. So we will see how far they can get, but that's they have a lot of money to try and do that. State and local grants. So this is $13 billion, and basically what it is it's a fund to pay states that have been that say that they are expending statewide resources um, in relation to dealing with um, uh, immigrants that are coming illegally into their states. So I thought as I was researching that provision that one of the most interesting things was out of the $13.5 billion that's in this fund, that Texas is apparently going to lay claim to about $11 billion of that $13 billion for things that happened in the Biden administration on there. So make of that what you will. It is controversial as well because the idea of these grants is that to encourage state and local law enforcement to basically establish their own immigration enforcement functionality. And there's a lot of questions, first of all, whether that's legal in the first place. And I'll be talking later on about something that got taken out for that reason, but also for things like, that police who are not trained as immigration officers might engage in racial profiling. It might undermine, local police policies, community trust, etc. Homeland Security Department funding $12 billion. This sounds like it's basically going to be used for tech. This is beyond money that's going to be paid to CBP and ICE, just for other functions that DHS does that are independent of those agencies. CBP, they are supposed to get $12 billion. This is again like ICE, although you might notice ICE got $31 billion. CBP is the Border Patrol and the port officers. They're getting $12 billion supposedly to expand their workforce, but also for new tech. That's part of their mission. Sounds like drones and surveillance cameras are two of the big things that they're going to be spending that money on. So $6 billion for border surveillance technology. This is again more drones and surveillance, etc. So I'll keep going on here. But the Department of Justice grants. This is another one where they are pushing money through Department of Justice to state and local law enforcement agencies, again to encourage them to do more cooperative law enforcement with ICE. And this is designed to get more money to those agencies to encourage them to do that. This is one of the most startling figures that I've seen, that was in here. This is $3.3 billion that's for Department of Justice, but Department of Justice are the immigration courts. And you just saw $31 billion to be spent by ICE to get people into immigration proceedings. There's currently a 4 million person backlog in the immigration courts. And this is the funding, and it's being split for a lot of different functions. But this is the funding for basically more judges and to be able to handle more cases in immigration courts. And what I think is, the hope for the administration is that with all the new detention capacity, that they will put people into detention. Hopefully, they won't be bonded out. They'll be in detention for the long term, and then they will seek to self-deport versus going through the immigration court process. And hopefully, in their mind, people will leave rather than the backlog getting longer. So even though right now, with those 4 million people, it can take you many years to get in front of an immigration judge. And usually the person can bond out if they don't have a violent history. Um, it seems like the administration has placed a very low priority on trying to expand the capacity of the immigration courts just based on this relatively paltry number compared to the other numbers that I just showed you. So that's why one of the reasons why I wanted to put the dollar amounts on here so you can see comparatively what we're talking about. This is a new provision that, and essentially, right now for sponsors of unaccompanied alien children who come in and they work with the Office of Refugee Resettlement to essentially provide like foster homes for unaccompanied children across the border. They're going to devote about $300 million or $0.3 billion to vetting the sponsors who take that on. Now, I have, you may say, well, I haven't heard about this being a real problem. And that's because there's not a lot of evidence that there's been problems with the Office of Refugee Resettlement being able to do adequate screening on here. But, one of the things that they're trying to put out is that that essentially that the people who, for the most part are acting out of the goodness of their hearts to help these kids are somehow criminal suspects and need investigating. And it kind of fits into the narrative that the administration is putting out there. I apologize for sort of the jumbled formatting. It looked okay when I was, actually, you know what? No, it doesn't look any better that way. I was going to say I could, if I take my, it doesn't, on there. I thought it looked okay when I was creating these slides. Anyway, special immigrant juveniles. So this is a series of slides about new fees that are about to come into the immigration system. This is again for kids, basically a new fee for them of at least $250 for children who are applying for this special green card category that's available if they can document that they've been abused, abandoned, neglected. And anyway, that's a new fee. Right now, they don't have I don't believe they have a fee. So that's that's something that is sort of this theme of trying to find these categories of people who are in vulnerable categories that are currently, we make things inexpensive deliberately just because they're usually in vulnerable situations, and now they're slapping large fees like temporary protected status. The fee is currently $50 to apply for that application, and it's being increased 1,000% to $500. And this is the category that's used for people when they have disasters in their countries or they have civil wars going on, and it's been in the news. But it definitely tells you that the administration wants life to be harder for people that are applying for TPS, even though they're canceling them left and right. So I don't know, maybe just, this mythical fee that people are paying because they're not going to be accepting new TPS applicants anyway. This is interesting, an apprehension fee. So now they want to charge a $5,000 fee if a person is apprehended between U.S. ports of entry. So this is after somebody's entered the country illegally, and then they may put them in detention. They may put them into deportation proceedings, but now they're also going to be charging a $5,000 fine on top of everything. And I'm not sure why they think somebody that they just picked up in the desert that's walked all the way from Venezuela or wherever they're coming from is going to be able to pay a $5,000 fee. And I guess that's the point on there, is that it's makes it, one more reason why they are going to be able to remove the person or make it so that it's so expensive that a person will choose to leave instead of having to deal with the fine, even if they have a legitimate claim for asylum, for example. So that'll be interesting to see how that gets applied. Um, Parole. So the Biden administration has allowed in more than 500,000 people in various parole categories from everywhere from Ukraine, Venezuela, Haiti, and a bunch of other countries. Right now, I don't know what the fee is, if there is a fee for the I-131 that goes with that, but now they're looking at $1,000, which is definitely at least double or triple what that fee would be. And I'm not sure for humanitarian parole whether there even is a fee. But this is now, and this is law. Everything I'm showing you is not a proposal. This is now signed by the president. And unless a judge rules any of these provisions to be illegal, which is doubtful, this is what we're looking at. Fees for non-immigrants. So if you're Chinese, there is a new $30 fee that is on top of the fees that anybody else would be paying. It's just for being Chinese on here, so that's in here. And again, I don't see, even though seems to people say it's nationality discrimination. Those types of cases usually have not been successful. So this $30 fee may not seem like a lot, but it's it's just one more insult to Chinese immigrants. This one, it's a minimum $5,000. Again, apologies for the formatting. So anyone arrested after being ordered removed for missing a hearing. So if you are in removal proceedings and you don't show up, this is a new fee. Even if if they catch you and order you removed, you still are under the statute subject to this $5,000 fee. Adjustment of status. This obviously is going to affect a lot of employment-based immigrants, but family immigrants. Well, I take that back. It doesn't affect them because this is for people who are in removal proceedings that have a basis for adjusting status. So it's $500 to $1,500 is what's authorized. So this shouldn't affect most people that are just adjusting normally. But a lot of people who are in removal proceedings have a basis for adjustment, and they make that claim when they're in court. It seems a little unfair because they might not have been in immigration proceedings in the first place if the basis for their adjustment was even known. But in any case, this is they're going to be paying more for adjustment of status than they were before. Asylum. This has been controversial for years. Asylum applicants don't pay a fee. A lot of people would say that that's because of our international treaty obligations don't permit that. But so I would expect this to be litigated, but I'm not sure, what the chances of success are. But basically, you're going to have to pay $100 to file asylum and then a $100 maintenance fee. Essentially, every year you're going to get a bill for $100 while your asylum application is pending, and you're going to have to pay that. And right now, asylum applications can take 5, 6, 7 years to get a case heard. So, do the math. Work permit fees. This is for people basically filing 765s along with TPS applications, and also people that are seeking parole or asylum. They're going to have to pay. Right now, they don't pay for I-765s, but they'll be paying $550 at a minimum now. So kind of add that to the asylum fee that we were just talking about before. Now there's another $550 fee on top of that, and the same for the TPS fee that we were talking about before. This is on top of that new application fee. So these processes are about to get a lot more expensive. And this is for ESTA. So the ESTA fee, if you are having to renew your ESTA, it's going to be $40 instead of $21 the next time you do it. My guess is that we're now, as Americans, going to start to see a lot of other countries and regions are starting to do this. Like the European Union is rolling something out like ESTA. The UK has something like it, and other countries do as well. So my guess is that we're going to start seeing increases that Americans have to pay when we're visiting other countries in response to this. We shall see. Non-immigrant visa fees. So this is a fee right now. You pay $6 if you're getting an I-94 upon entering the U.S. And this is now about to go up to $30. And then a new fee on top of normal consular fees for getting a non-immigrant visa of $250 additional dollars that you're going to have to pay on top of the fees you already have to pay for a non-immigrant visa application. So budget more. I wanted to mention a couple of things that got struck from the bill that aren't in there, but these were things that were in there up until a couple of days before it passed. But one of them was a $5,000 fee for the sponsors of children that are in immigration court proceedings. That got struck because they said it's unrelated to federal spending. It's a policy decision. Preliminary injunctions. This is a pretty important one, even though the Supreme Court has limited federal national injunctions. This would have barred all preliminary injunctions, not just the national ones, in the federal court cases. So this is that was struck, and that means that for litigation, and I'll try and mention a few things about litigation after the slide, but those are that provision was struck. So preliminary injunctions are still available, which makes litigation still a relatively attractive option to challenge illegal immigration policies. State enforcement authority over immigration laws. So this is there was a provision in there that explicitly said states could enforce immigration law on their own versus just playing an assisting role with ICE, like detaining somebody while ICE comes and picks them up. That was deemed to be illegal. And then finally, there was another $10 billion fund for states that because the language in there appeared to allow state and local law enforcement authorities to arrest non-citizens on immigration grounds, which is deemed to be something that only ICE can do, only the federal government can do. So those were the big changes in the bill. I did want to mention from on litigation that we're working on. So we added this week the onboarding materials for a new student case that is a follow-up to our previous student case. So you may remember my mentioning last week that we had a successful outcome for the 358 students that we were representing in the district court in Atlanta over the revocation of their SEVA status, and the judge authorized a settlement that we had, which was great for our plaintiffs, which essentially restored everything. But beyond that, because other courts had done that, we also got guarantees that they had to apply the reinstatement retroactively. And that's important because people, when they're applying for optional practical training, or they have to otherwise show that they've had a clean immigration history, they now have documentation, and every one of our plaintiffs got a letter from ICE basically documenting that. Also important is we did not have the case dismissed with prejudice regarding our claims against the Department of State. So the settlement only applies to our suit against the Department of Homeland Security. For Department of State, we are still able to sue them under our settlement for visa revocation. So what we are doing, we are on. That was weird. We're going to have a new case, probably filing in DC, although we're not 100% certain. There's just a really good recent DC Circuit Court case that's helpful for our cause. But basically, we're now going to sue just the Department of State over the issue of visa revocations. We think we have some pretty good arguments of why the revocation policy was illegal. If you were one of those 358 plaintiffs, that were in the original case. You are not, we're not charging you to be in the second case. We do want you to onboard again so that we know for sure that you want to be in the second case. Don't when you get to the end, if you get taken to a payment portal, just ignore it. We'll have a record that you're in. You should get an email as well. But if you're interested in being in the case, if you're a student, one difference between this case and the previous one is that the previous one we were not accepting plaintiffs who were actually outside the country, but we are in this case. So if you are a student who left after your CVIS was terminated, and then you had your visa revoked, or your visa was revoked, and then you left on there, and we said in the earlier case, and there were good reasons for this, that we couldn't take you in that case. This is a different because we're only dealing with the visa revocation issue, so you are welcome to be in that. But if you want to be in the case, I will direct you to Impact Litigation's page. And if you go there, you'll see the FAQ that explains sort of the legal theory and how the case works if you want to be in it. Okay. That was one of the cases. The other case that we're working on onboarding right now, and we haven't really publicized it much yet, but we will shortly, is if you are Venezuelan. So you may know that the U.S. Supreme Court has issued a decision that affected national injunctions. And there was a national injunction requiring the Trump administration to continue processing Venezuelan TPS cases and work authorization. What hasn't been altered by the Supreme Court decision is the ability to seek out individual relief in any of these cases. And so that means we can file mass cases. We can seek class certification, and the judge may issue a national injunction based on class certification, which is what the cases are seeking right now for the Venezuelan TPS folks. But ours is is going to be filed as an individual case, which means that even if we're not successful in getting a national injunction, we would at least ask the judge for relief for anybody who are individual plaintiffs in that case. So that's the Venezuelan TPS case. If you are a 2023 Venezuelan TPS recipient and you're interested in suing the government, I would suggest you go and read the FAQ on that case and see if it's something that is attractive to you. That was the only other thing I was going to mention is there was a decision today by the Supreme Court of the United States, and this was one that was kind of interesting. So the Supreme Court has basically killed a Florida law that so Florida enacted a law that made it a crime for people that were unauthorized migrants in the state to be in the state. So that was sort of an independent crime, and it's of interest because my state is essentially doing that. I think Oklahoma is trying to do that. There's a bunch of states in the South in particular, and probably other areas that have tried that have tried to pass similar things. And the Supreme Court, a lower court, blocked the DeSantis administration from implementing that new law, and that was the Supreme Court basically said today that the states don't have that power. So that was actually a nice win for the pro-immigration community after a string of tough decisions that have come from the Supreme Court. But that's one that should probably mute some of the efforts at the state level to do provisions that are similar to what Florida did. So I'm going to leave it there. I know that it's only about halfway through what I usually would do. Let me see if there are any questions that are here that look like they would be appropriate. Um, so this is a question, a good question about whether any changes are coming from the big bill with USCIS, particularly naturalization. So the answer on it is there's almost nothing that's mentioned about USCIS in the bill. Um, we still believe that other measures that are out there requiring budget cuts are going to affect USCIS, but nothing that is in this bill appears to be affecting USCIS operations, including naturalization. Now, with that said, we do expect, in general, processes like naturalization to get harder. Expect to see a lot more scrutiny of cases that are being filed, a lot more of a look back of the person's immigration history to see if there are any violations in the past. Um, we already, I'll just give you a for example on something that is just reflects the new environment, but somebody who had a J1 waiver was able to get an immigrant visa at a consulate abroad. The consulate issued the immigrant visa, the green card, essentially, after the person had finished the 2-year home residence requirement. And the immigration officer, and this is not our case, but we heard about this through the law firm that it happened to. But the immigrations officer at naturalization said, you filed your J1 waiver before you had finished you filed for the green card at the consulate before you had finished your 2 years J1 service, and therefore we're denying your naturalization. So that's not how the law actually reads on there. And I'm sure that the person who is this has happened to will have a very good case if they decide to sue. But it sort of just as a reminder that immigration officers are under a lot of pressure to come up with reasons to deny. You've also heard about denaturalization. We've talked about that before, where there was Department of Justice is under instructions to kind of find cases where where people were granted citizenship and it may have had some misstatements in their past. There's a DOJ memo on that right now. So regarding naturalization, I just see it getting harder and longer because of that. But some things are a little bit better at naturalization because a lot of people are filing naturalizations electronically. So one of sort of the glimmers of hope as far as processing times is that USCIS seems like they are committed still to its electronic filing program and getting more and more services in that. And that is one of the best ways to be able to resolve these backlogs is to have a lot of the data entry handled by the computers. So that's the answer to that question. Hi, Nancy. It's nice to see you. Nancy is one of my favorite legal marketers on there. She's a quite well known in the field. And then this last question is, what do I think about green card holders and travel without a criminal history, but a speeding ticket? So this is one I would say there's not a lot of reason to worry. As a green card holder, the main thing you have to worry about is, did you do something before or after you got the green card that would make you inadmissible from the United States? And the speeding ticket is not that. It is so it would have to be something that would rise to a crime involving moral turpitude or a aggravated felony or a drug offense or something serious like that. But that's not a speeding ticket. First of all, I don't think it even shows up on the record, but that would not trigger any kind of removal issues or should not be an issue. Right? And I certainly haven't heard about anything like that. Where we have heard about green card holders who have had some issues with travel, usually is somebody who I'd say a more serious criminal violation that maybe was overlooked when they got the green card, and the officer at the time said this is not serious enough, um, but was still a crime involving moral turpitude. Um, and it's only been a handful of those cases. So it's been fairly egregious what we have heard for green card holders who've had problems, but it's usually some kind of fairly serious criminal issue. So I'm not going to tell you that travel is always going to be without events for green card holders. Um, I think more likely green card holders that travel abroad are going to have bigger issues about um, re-entering the United States if it looks like they haven't been maintaining permanent ties to the United States. That's probably where people are going to more likely encounter problems. Um, okay, and now we have a question regarding delays in USCIS processing of some waiver applications submitted in April, May. Is it something related to the bill? So, um, Dr. Velopati, you didn't say which kinds of waivers, whether we're talking about J waivers or 212D3 waivers. So maybe if you're watching this, if you can post another comment, I can see what you're talking about. But I have not. J waivers. Yeah, so USCIS is actually they're involved. Well, I don't think it has anything to do with the bill. If there have been delays in processing times, it may honestly be because the unit has had some. It's not a big unit that actually issues the 612 approvals for J1 waivers. Um, I haven't heard this in the immigration bar, but I guess that the folks that are filing these waivers are watching the numbers pretty closely. And it's also hard to tell. Sometimes you'll see a slowdown in April and May, and it may even show up in processing times online. And then what sometimes they're doing is they've moved people out for training, um, and they may be rotating new people in. So I think it's a little early to say something's going on with that. I do know that there have been departures from people at USCIS, and my guess is that for every 2 or 3 people departing, maybe one is getting replaced. That seems to have been the pattern the last time that they are slow walking, rehiring people, so the processing times just get longer and longer on there. But I don't have more information to give you um, than that. Although now that you've said it in this comment, I'm obviously going to be paying more attention to it. So I might have on a future live stream information on that. So um, I think those are my questions for tonight. I appreciate your indulging me to go through that list. So when I was writing those slides, I was kind of like doing it for my own purposes to basically get familiar with those numbers. But I do think that people sort of need to be aware that it's not just the Medicaid cuts and it's not just the tax cuts that are in there, that there are a lot of provisions that affect immigration. And not surprisingly, almost every one of them are designed to make things somewhat harder. But for the most part, like I said, normal immigration processing, except for those fee increases, are not impacted directly by the provisions in the bill. That's not to say that other stuff might not come along. But one thing to know is when I said in here, and I'll add them back, the reason why these provisions were struck is they were deemed to have affect policy and not just spending. And that's important because this bill passed with a simple majority of 50 plus 50 Republicans voted for it, and then they broke the tie with Vice President Vance. He could do that for this kind of bill because it's a straight spending bill. When they get into more serious immigration policy changes, the Democrats have the ability to filibuster and can require Republicans to produce 60 votes for a lot of the changes that they would like to make. So this is probably it for immigration bills that are going to pass that are doing big policy, as far as they can spend money on things, they can cut money for things, but they can't just like make policy changes about immigration now without 60 votes. So I'm fairly optimistic that we're not going to see, unless they want to make a deal with Democrats, which could happen, um, that we're not going to see any more immigration legislation for a while. In fact, it's probably going to be hard for the Republicans to pass anything because their majorities are so slim in both houses that this is probably their one big. It is their one big. You can call it beautiful or not beautiful, but it is their one big bill that they are probably going to be passing between now and next the November 2026 election. But you never know. Anyway, I'm going to end now, and I will be back next week, and we'll be back probably to our regular format, and I'll probably be joined by a colleague. But enjoy your summer as it goes along, and we'll see you next time. So thanks, everybody.